Zion Thompson, 33, and born with something to prove. I never planned on revealing my business success at the family Christmas dinner, but after years of their subtle jabs about my coffee shop hobby, I finally mentioned owning 21 locations. The table erupted in laughter. My father, Walter, called it cute, that I'd exaggerate my little coffee stand. What happened next changed our family forever. But before I continue my story, if you're watching this, let me know where you're from and hit that subscribe button for more real-life stories. Growing up in the Thompson household meant living with constant expectations. My father, Walter Thompson, built his real estate empire from the ground up, turning a small agency into one of the most prominent firms in our city. From day one, he made it clear that his children were expected to follow in his footsteps. Success in the Thompson family was narrowly defined. Join the family business, make lots of money, and flaunt it at country club gatherings. I was always the odd one out. While my younger brother Dylan thrived under our father's wing, soaking up every lesson about property values and investment strategies, I found myself drawn to different dreams. My sister Hannah fell somewhere in the middle, ambitious but conflicted about the family path. When I was 16, I got my first job at a local coffee shop owned by Samuel Wright, a former corporate executive who had left the rat race to pursue his passion. While my father dismissed it as flipping burgers with fancy beans, I found something magical in that small aromatic space. Samuel noticed my enthusiasm and took me under his wing, teaching me everything from bean selection to business management. Coffee isn't just a drink, Zion, he would say. It's a community builder, a daily ritual that brings people together. My parents tolerated what they called my little hobby because they assumed it was a phase. When I enrolled at the state university to study business rather than attending my father's Ivy League alma mater, the disappointment in our household was palpable. A Thompson settling for mediocrity. My father remarked at the dinner table after I announced my college choice. What will we tell the neighbors? Throughout college, I continued working at Samuel's shop, gradually taking on more responsibilities. I studied supply chain management, marketing, and finance, with a singular focus someday opening my own coffee business. When I presented my detailed business plan as my senior project and received the highest grade in the class, I was ecstatic. My professor even suggested I apply for a small business grant. When I called home with the news, my mother Diane answered. "That's nice, honey," she said distractedly. "Did you hear Dylan made the dean's list at Wharton? Your father is taking us all out to celebrate tonight?" Graduation day arrived, and with it came the conversation I had been dreading. My father cornered me at the family celebration, champagne in hand, and a practiced smile on his face. "So, you'll start at the firm on Monday," he stated, not asked. "I've set up an office for you next to Dylan's for when he graduates next year. Junior associates usually share, but I pulled some strings." When I explained my plans to continue in the coffee industry and eventually open my own shop, his smile hardened into something cold. "This childish barista fantasy ends now," he said. "No son of mine is going to waste his life serving coffee to real business people." I stood my ground. The argument that followed effectively severed my financial ties to the family. I walked away with nothing but my degree, my savings from 4 years of barista tips, and a determination to prove him wrong. The next 5 years were brutally difficult. I secured a small bank loan after being rejected 7 times. I found a tiny, dilapidated storefront that no one wanted in a neighborhood that was years away from the gentrification that would eventually make it desirable. I painted the walls myself, scoured auction houses for secondhand equipment, and slept on a cot in the storage room to save on rent. During this time, my girlfriend Jessica, who had promised to stick with me through thick and thin, decided that the thin was too thin for her liking. She left me for an investment banker who could provide the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to while I was still part of the Thompson family circle. "I'm sorry, Zion," she said, as she packed her things from our shared apartment. "I believe in you. I really do. But I need stability now, not promises about the future." The breakup was a low point, but it wasn't rock bottom. Rock bottom came 3 months later when a pipe burst in the ceiling of my shop, destroying much of my equipment and forcing me to close for repairs I couldn't afford. I sat on the wet floor that night, surrounded by the ruins of my dreams, seriously considering calling my father to admit defeat. That's when Carter Wilson walked in. He had been a regular customer, a graphic designer, who often spent hours working on his laptop in my shop. He surveyed the damage, sat down next to me on the soaking floor, and instead of offering sympathy, he offered partnership. "I've been saving to start my own design studio," he said. "But I believe in what you're doing here. Let me invest. You handle the coffee, I'll handle the branding and marketing." Carter's investment and skills gave the shop new life. His redesign of our logo and packaging caught the attention of local media. Our signature blend, which I had been perfecting for years, began drawing customers from across the city. Slowly, we expanded, opening a second location 2 years later and a third 2 years after that. During those years, my family interactions were limited to obligatory holiday gatherings where my business was dismissed as a hobby or that coffee thing you're still doing. My father never asked about financials, locations, or growth. My brother made barista jokes. Only my grandmother Eleanor showed genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions, and even visiting my original shop when no one else in the family would. The game changer came when Samuel decided to retire. He approached me first about buying his shop, the very place where my coffee journey began. "You were always meant to take over," he said. "I've turned down better offers waiting for you to be ready." With 4 successful locations and a growing reputation, I secured financing for the acquisition. This purchase taught me something critical about expansion. Sometimes buying existing businesses was more efficient than building from scratch. I began looking for struggling coffee shops in good locations, shops with potential but poor management. Around this time, I met Natalie Chen at a small business conference. As a business consultant specializing in retail operations, she immediately spotted inefficiencies in my business model. Our professional relationship quickly blossomed into friendship, and she introduced me to strategies that would transform my operations. "You have a great product and loyal customers," she observed during her analysis, "but your back-end systems are holding you back from serious growth." With Natalie's help, I streamlined everything from inventory management to staff scheduling. I implemented a robust training program led by Amber Davis, a barista I promoted to operations manager after recognizing her exceptional organizational skills. The result was a business that could scale without losing quality control. Within 4 years, I expanded from 4 shops to 21 through a combination of strategic acquisitions and new locations. Each shop maintained its neighborhood character while benefiting from our centralized systems and training. My company, Thompson Coffee Collective, named partly as an ironic nod to the family that never supported it, became known for consistent, quality community engagement and employee satisfaction. Throughout this growth period, I maintained minimal contact with my family. They never asked about my business, so I never volunteered information. In retrospect, I realized I was waiting for the day I could prove them all wrong. But as success came, I found myself caring less about their validation and more about building something meaningful on my own terms. December 25th arrived with its usual mix of holiday cheer and family dread. I sat in my car outside my parents' sprawling Tudor-style home, watching other family members arrive with elaborately wrapped gifts and practiced smiles. I considered driving away. I had done that once before 3 Christmases ago. But the thought of disappointing my grandmother Eleanor kept me rooted to the spot. "You're here!" Eleanor exclaimed. When I finally made my way to the door, her 82-year-old frame engulfing me in a surprisingly strong hug, I was worried you might skip again. "Not this year, Grandma," I promised, handing her a package of her favorite caramels and a pound of my shop's holiday blend. "I brought the good stuff." "Bless you," she whispered conspiratorially. "Your mother's coffee tastes like dishwater." The house was decorated immaculately, as always, with professional-looking garlands draping the sweeping staircase and a 12-foot Christmas tree that would make department stores jealous. My mother Diane flitted from guest to guest in a designer dress, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. "Zion, you made it," she said, air kissing near my cheek to avoid smudging her makeup. "Everyone's in the living room. Do try to be sociable this year." The living room was a gathering of Thompson success stories, or at least that's how they presented themselves. Uncle Raymond, a financial advisor who never missed an opportunity to mention his high-net-worth clients, was holding court near the fireplace. Aunt Patricia, my father's sister, nodded along while subtly checking the brand labels on everyone's outfits. My cousin Garrett, dressed in what I assumed was an unnecessarily expensive suit, was showing something on his phone to my brother Dylan. Both looked up when I entered, their expressions shifting from animation to practiced indifference. "The coffee kid arrives," Dylan remarked just loudly enough to be heard. At 29, my brother had fully embraced our father's worldview, along with his taste for ostentatious watches and aggressive networking. I grabbed a glass of wine from a passing server. Yes, my parents hired servers for family Christmas, and found a quiet corner where I could observe without engaging. Years of these gatherings had taught me to lay low until dinner, make polite conversation through the meal, then make an excuse to leave before dessert. My sister Hannah spotted me and wandered over, glass in hand. At 31, she had recently been promoted to senior marketing director at a pharmaceutical company. Impressive by any standard, but still considered second-tier success in our father's eyes, since it wasn't real estate. "Surviving so far?" she asked, clinking her glass against mine. "Barely through the door," I replied. "What's the drama level this year?" "Dad's been bragging about signing the Westlake development deal all evening. And Dylan just got promoted to junior partner, so prepare for that announcement to be made at least 3 times. Before I could respond, a dinner bell rang, and the family migrated to the formal dining room. The table was a vision of holiday perfection, with fine china crystal glasses and elaborate centerpieces. Name cards directed everyone to their assigned seats, a Thompson family tradition that inevitably revealed the current family hierarchy. I found myself between Aunt Patricia and my grandmother, directly across from Dylan and as far from the head of the table as possible without being relegated to the kids' table. Walter Thompson sat at the head of the table, resplendent in a tailored suit, despite the supposed informality of a family gathering. He stood raising his glass for the traditional Christmas toast. "To the Thompson legacy," he began, his deep voice commanding immediate silence. "This has been a landmark year for Thompson Enterprises. Our Westlake development will break ground in January, thanks to connections I've cultivated over decades." He nodded to Dylan. "And I'm proud to announce that Dylan has been named junior partner, the youngest in the firm's history." Applause rippled around the table. Dylan affected a humble nod that he must have practiced in the mirror. "The Thompson name continues to grow in influence," my father continued. "Garrett's fund management has attracted attention from the Wall Street Journal. Hannah's pharmaceutical work is," he paused, searching for a compliment, "steady. And we're all blessed with health and prosperity." The toast continued, conspicuously avoiding any mention of me or my work. It was nothing new. I had been systematically excluded from family recognition since choosing my own path. Usually, I let it roll off my back, but something about this particular omission after the year I'd had struck a nerve. Dinner proceeded with the usual choreographed conversations. Uncle Raymond expounded on market forecasts. Aunt Patricia gossiped about neighbors' financial troubles with barely disguised glee. Garrett boasted about client acquisitions, strategically dropping names of minor celebrities. Eventually, as it always did, attention turned to me. So Zion Uncle Raymond began with the condescending tone reserved for children and those he deemed financial failures still playing with your coffee shop. Before I could answer, Dylan jumped in. "Yeah, how's the barista life treating you? Learning lots of fancy Italian words." He mimicked a stereotypical coffee order with exaggerated hand gestures. I felt my grandmother's hand squeeze my knee under the table, a silent show of support. "Actually," I started. "You know, my father," interrupted Thompson. "Enterprises has a retail division now. We could probably find something for you if you're finally ready to join the real business world." The table went quiet, everyone watching for my reaction. This was new. My father had never before offered to rescue me from my chosen career. It felt less like an olive branch and more like a public declaration that my business was failing. "My business is doing fine," I said evenly. "Thanks for the offer." "Oh, come on," Dylan pressed. "One shop in that sketchy neighborhood, you can't be making more than the shift managers at McDonald's." Something inside me snapped. After years of dismissal, after building a business that now employed over 100 people and served thousands of customers daily, I was tired of diminishing myself for their comfort. "Actually, I own 21 shops now," I said quietly. The table erupted in laughter. Not chuckles, full-throated head thrown back laughter. 21. That's precious, Aunt Patricia wheezed, wiping away an imaginary tear. I think you mean you've worked at 21 coffee shops. Uncle Raymond corrected, as if I might be confused about the difference. My father's response cut deepest. It's cute that you'd exaggerate your little coffee stand that way, he said, his voice dripping with patronizing amusement. But this is a table of actual business people. We understand the difference between ownership and whatever it is you do. Dylan was practically howling. 21 shops. Next he'll tell us he's competing with Starbucks. I sat there, fork suspended midair, as my family mockingly dismantled the success I'd worked years to build. Only two people weren't laughing: my grandmother, whose face had hardened into a mask of disapproval, directed at the others, and strangely, my sister Hannah, who was studying me with newfound curiosity. I believe him, my grandmother said, firmly cutting through the laughter. Zion has never been one to exaggerate or lie. Mother, please, my father said dismissively. You don't understand business. Nobody goes from one failing coffee shop to 21 successful ones without capital connections or joining a franchise, none of which Zion has. Except I did, I said, placing my napkin on the table and standing up. And they're all profitable. But you never asked, so I never told you. The amusement around the table was fading, replaced by confusion, and from my father, a flash of something that looked almost like concern. Zion. He started his tone, shifting to one he used for business negotiations. If you're having some success, that's wonderful. But 21 locations would require millions in investment capital management infrastructure, all of which I have, I interrupted calmly. But this clearly isn't the place to discuss it. Excuse me, I need some air. I walked out of the dining room with as much dignity as I could muster. Behind me, I heard my grandmother's chair scrape as she stood up, followed by her sharp voice. You should all be ashamed of yourselves. I didn't wait for dessert. I got in my car and drove home, the sound of their mocking laughter still ringing in my ears. When I finally reached my apartment, I called the one person who had been there through all the struggles. Carter, I said, when he answered, my voice finally breaking. They laughed at me. All of them. What my family failed to understand, what they never bothered to learn, was just how much blood, sweat, and tears had gone into building Thompson Coffee Collective. Their laughter at Christmas dinner revealed not just their disbelief, but their complete ignorance of my journey. The truth was far from the overnight success they assumed I was claiming. My first shop, which I named Common Grounds, was located in a forgotten corner of downtown in a building so dilapidated, the landlord gave me 6 months free rent just to have someone occupy the space. I slept on a camping cot in the storage room for the first 8 months, showering at a nearby gym where I got the cheapest membership available. I was rejected for small business loans by 7 different banks before First City Credit Union took a chance on me, largely because the loan officer, Michelle, was a regular customer who believed in my vision. The loan was barely enough to cover essential equipment, and I learned to fix everything myself rather than calling repair services. YouTube tutorials became my nighttime education after 18-hour workdays. When the vintage espresso machine I'd bought secondhand broke down during our 3rd week open, I stayed up all night, disassembling it on the prep table, using tools borrowed from a neighboring business. By morning, with grease-stained hands and bloodshot eyes, I had it running again, just barely in time for the morning rush. Those early years taught me resilience in ways my privileged upbringing never had. When the air conditioning failed during the hottest week of summer, I bought every fan I could find and offered heatwave discounts that turned a potential disaster into our busiest week to date. When a nearby construction project cut foot traffic by 60%, I started a delivery service, personally biking coffee to offices within a 2-mile radius. The turning point came in our 2nd year. I had been experimenting with a unique coffee blend combining beans from Ethiopia, Guatemala, and Sumatra in proportions that conventional wisdom said wouldn't work. After months of tweaking, I created something special, a complex, smooth profile with notes of chocolate cherry and a hint of citrus. I named it Thompson Revelation, a private joke about my family's dismissal. A food blogger happened to try it, loved it, and wrote a glowing review. Suddenly, there were lines out the door. A local morning show featured us in a segment about hidden gem businesses. With the increased revenue, I was finally able to hire help beyond the 2 part-time baristas who had been with me since opening day. I approached each new hire with the same philosophy: find passionate people and treat them better than any other coffee shop would. While competitors paid minimum wage, I started employees at $15 per hour when that was practically unheard of in food service. I created profit sharing even when profits were slim. I covered health insurance when we expanded to our second location. The loyalty this approach fostered became our greatest strength. While other coffee shops faced constant turnover, my staff stayed, grew, and invested themselves in our success. This became especially valuable when I met Amber Davis, a psychology graduate working as a barista while figuring out her next steps. Her organizational skills and people management instincts were immediately apparent. Within 6 months, I promoted her to shift supervisor, and 6 months after that to manager. Most business owners would be threatened by someone who organizes systems better than they do, she told me once. But you actually seem relieved. I am, I admitted. I'm good at coffee customer experience and vision, but I need people who excel where I don't. With Amber handling day-to-day operations, I could focus on growth. Samuel's retirement, and offer to sell me his shop, the very place where I had started as a teenage employee, was both emotionally significant and strategically important. His location was in a bustling area I couldn't otherwise afford to enter and came with a loyal customer base. The acquisition taught me something crucial. Sometimes the smartest growth comes not from building from scratch, but from improving what already exists. I began looking for struggling coffee shops with good locations but poor management or outdated concepts. Over the next 2 years, I acquired 7 such businesses, rebranding them as part of Thompson Coffee Collective, while preserving elements that made each location special to its neighborhood. Financing these expansions required creative approaches. Traditional banks still saw food service as high risk, especially with my last name not opening the doors it once might have. Instead, I found investors who believed in what we were building, including 3 regular customers who had made their own fortunes in tech and wanted to diversify. Meeting Natalie Chen was another game changer. She attended a small business workshop where I was speaking about community engagement strategies. Afterward, she approached me with observations about my presentation that were so incisive I immediately asked for her business card. As a consultant specializing in retail operations, Natalie quickly identified inefficiencies I hadn't recognized. Our supply chain was needlessly complicated. Our training program, while effective, wasn't standardized across locations. Our point-of-sale system was outdated and missing valuable data collection opportunities. You've built something impressive through pure hustle and good instincts, she told me during our first official consultation. Imagine what you could do with proper systems. With Natalie's guidance, we overhauled our operations. We centralized purchasing while keeping bean selection and food sourcing local where it made sense. We created a comprehensive training manual and certification program for baristas. We upgraded technology across all locations and implemented a customer loyalty app that increased repeat visits by 27%. The efficiencies created room for even more aggressive expansion. I secured a significant business loan based on our proven track record and acquired a small regional chain of 5 shops when its owner decided to retire. By reinventing their tired brand and upgrading their equipment and training, we turned 5 underperforming locations into thriving community hubs within 6 months. Our 20th and 21st locations opened simultaneously in upscale shopping districts, financed entirely through our own revenue, no loans required. The irony wasn't lost on me that one of these shops leased space in a building owned by Thompson Enterprises, my father's company, though I doubted he knew about the connection since he used property management companies for his retail spaces. By the time of that fateful Christmas dinner, Thompson Coffee Collective was valued at over $15 million. We employed 116 people, served over 8,000 customers daily across all locations, and had been approached twice by national chains interested in acquisition, offers I had declined. We had been featured in Entrepreneur magazine, won regional awards for business growth, and been recognized for our ethical sourcing practices and community involvement. Our coffee was served in 3 high-end restaurants, and we had just launched a subscription service that was growing faster than projected. All of this without a cent from my family, without leveraging the Thompson name for connections, and without a single visit from any of them to see what I had built. Their laughter at Christmas wasn't just hurtful, it was a stark reminder of how completely they had chosen to ignore my life and accomplishments. What they were about to learn, however, was that success is the best revenge, especially when that success becomes impossible to ignore. Exactly 1 week after the Christmas dinner disaster, I was working at our flagship location in the downtown arts district. This shop, our 11th acquisition, had been transformed from a struggling generic cafe into our most profitable location. The renovation had preserved the historic building's character while creating a warm, inviting space that balanced efficiency with comfort. I was behind the counter helping during the post-lunch rush, something I still did regularly to stay connected to the customer experience. When the door chimed, looking up from the latte I was finishing, I froze. Walking into my coffee shop were my father, Walter Thompson, and my brother, Dylan. They looked comically out of place. Both in expensive suits, my father's camel hair coat probably worth more than our vintage espresso machine. Their expressions were a mix of barely concealed surprise as they took in the bustling, sophisticated operation around them. This clearly wasn't the struggling hole in the wall they had imagined. "Busy place," my father commented, as they approached the counter, attempting casual indifference despite his obvious assessment of every detail. "Dad, Dylan." I nodded to each, maintaining professional composure despite my racing heart. "What brings you here?" "Can't a father visit his son's business?" Walter asked with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "After our conversation at Christmas, we thought we should see this operation for ourselves." Dylan was barely listening, too busy taking in the shop with poorly disguised astonishment. His eyes lingered on the custom equipment, the sophisticated point-of-sale system, and the wall displaying our coffee awards. "I'm a bit tied up at the moment," I said, gesturing to the line of customers. "Feel free to grab a table. First drinks on the house." As I returned to work, I watched from the corner of my eye as they ordered from Amber, who gave me a questioning look. I subtly shook my head. No special treatment. They received the same service as any other customer, though I noticed Dylan stealthily taking photos of our menu and layout with his phone. 20 minutes later, when the rush subsided, I joined them at their table. My father was sipping his Americano with a thoughtful expression. "This is actually quite good," he admitted, sounding surprised. "We've won regional awards for our roasts 3 years running," I replied, matter-of-factly. "Cozy place," Dylan said, his tone making cozy sound like a criticism. "But just one location doesn't exactly make an empire." "This is one of 21, I responded calmly. "Our headquarters is across town. This happens to be our highest volume shop." My father set down his cup, his businessman mask slipping into place. "About that," claimed Zion, "I'll admit this is more established than I expected. But 21 locations would require substantial capital investment management infrastructure, which I have," I interrupted. "Thompson Coffee Collective employs over 100 people, serves thousands of daily customers, and yes, operates 21 locations across 3 counties. As if on cue, a regular customer approached our table. Josephine, a retired literature professor who visited daily. "Zion, that new Guatemalan single origin is exceptional," she said warmly. "Will it be available for home purchase soon?" "Next week," Josephine first smiled. "We're just waiting on the custom bags." "Wonderful. Oh, and thank you for sponsoring the library fundraiser again this year. Your coffee stations were the hit of the evening." After she left, my father's expression had shifted subtly. I could almost see the gears turning behind his eyes, recalculating his approach. "You've clearly built something here," he said, with newfound respect in his voice that might have meant something to me years ago. "I always knew you had potential. Thompson blood shows through eventually." "I've been reviewing some public records," he continued, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Your business registration property records. Impressive expansion in a short time." The real reason for their visit was emerging. My father hadn't come to apologize or make amends. He'd come because he'd finally bothered to research my business and discovered it was valuable. "We should discuss how to take this to the next level," he said, leaning forward eagerly. "Thompson Enterprises could provide capital for national expansion. With our resources and your coffee knowledge, we could build something truly significant." Dylan nodded enthusiastically. We're talking serious growth potential, maybe franchise opportunities, wholesale distribution to major retailers. I've been thinking, my father continued smoothly, that incorporating your coffee business under the Thompson Enterprises umbrella would give you access to our legal team, our real estate connections, our financial advisors. And what would this incorporation entail? I asked, already knowing the answer. Standard business acquisition structure. Thompson Enterprises would become majority shareholder, say 60%, with you retaining 40% ownership and operational control. He smiled magnanimously. We'd keep you on as president of the coffee division, of course. Dylan jumped in, unable to contain himself. I could come on as co-manager, learn the coffee side from you while implementing our business systems. Fix some of the amateur approaches you've probably been using. The audacity was breathtaking. After years of mockery and dismissal, after laughing in my face just a week ago, they now wanted to swoop in and claim majority ownership of what I'd built through years of struggle, all while framing it as doing me a favor. And what exactly does Thompson Enterprises bring to this partnership besides taking majority control? I asked, my voice steady, despite my rising anger. Connection, Zion, my father said, as if explaining to a child. Do you know how many regulatory hurdles we could help you navigate? Health inspection, zoning issues? They all go much smoother when you have the right people making calls. The implied threat wasn't subtle. Join us, or perhaps face mysterious regulatory problems. Plus, Dylan added, no offense, but your branding could use professional help. That logo looks like something from a community college design class. The logo Carter had created, that had become synonymous with quality coffee throughout the region, that we had customers requesting on merchandise. I see, I said finally. So you're proposing that I give you 60% of my company because you've suddenly decided it's legitimate after years of treating it as a joke. My father's expression hardened slightly. Don't be dramatic, Zion. We're offering to elevate your little coffee shops into a serious business operation. My little coffee shops? I repeated, slowly generated $3.8 million in profit last year. What did the Thompson Enterprises retail division make? The flash of surprise on my father's face was brief, but unmistakable. This isn't about last year's numbers, he recovered quickly. It's about future potential. I think I'll manage my future potential on my own, I said, standing up. Thanks for stopping by, but I have a business to run. One that's doing just fine without Thompson Enterprises. Dylan's face flushed with anger. You're making a mistake. Dad's offering you legitimacy here. No, I corrected him. He's offering to take what I've built. There's a difference. I gestured to the door. I think we're done here. My father stood slowly buttoning his expensive coat. For a moment I thought he might apologize, might acknowledge what I had accomplished. Instead, he simply said, think about our offer, Zion. Family businesses work best when the family works together. This stopped being about family the moment you laughed at my success, I replied. Please don't come back unless you're here as customers. They left without another word, Dylan shooting a venomous glare over his shoulder as the door closed behind them. Amber approached as soon as they were gone. Those were your father and brother, she asked, having heard enough stories over the years to recognize them. What did they want? To take what they didn't build, I answered, watching through the window as they climbed into my father's luxury sedan. But that's not going to happen. I already knew, however, that this visit was just the beginning. Walter Thompson didn't accept rejection, especially not from someone he still viewed as beneath him. The real battle was about to begin. The aftermath of my father and brother's visit was swift and predictable. Within hours, my phone began lighting up with messages from family members. My mother was first. Her text, a masterpiece of passive-aggressive guilt. Zion, your father was only trying to help. This hostility toward family is very hurtful. We raised you better than this. Dylan was less subtle. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Dad was throwing you a lifeline, and you spat in his face. Good luck when your coffee fad collapses. By evening, Aunt Patricia had apparently been briefed and launched her own offensive. Walter tells me you've become quite arrogant about your little coffee venture. Pride before the fall, dear nephew. Remember who you're turning your back on. I silenced my phone and focused on work, but the Thompson family machine was just warming up. The next morning I received a call from a commercial real estate agent I'd been negotiating with for our next location. Suddenly, the property was no longer available. No explanation offered. 2 days later, I learned that my father had contacted the landlord of our flagship store, the very one he had visited, inquiring about the terms of our lease and whether there might be more suitable tenants for the space. The landlord, fortunately loyal after our years of prompt payments and property improvements, called to warn me. "I don't know what's going on between you and Walter Thompson," she said, "but he seemed very interested in finding ways to terminate your lease early." I thanked her for the heads up and immediately called Marcus Harrison, the attorney, who had handled our business contracts since our 10th location. Marcus was sharp, straightforward, and had a personal distaste for underhanded business tactics, having seen his own family's restaurant pushed out by a developer years earlier. "They're playing dirty already," Marcus observed after I filled him in. "But they're assuming you're operating on the same small scale they saw years ago. They don't realize you have resources now, too." He advised documenting everything and promised to review all our leases for vulnerabilities. As we wrapped up the call, he added, "For what it's worth, Zion, I've dealt with Walter Thompson's legal team on other matters. He's overextended right now with that Westlake development. Might explain the sudden interest in your profitable business." This insight gave me pause. My father's aggressive play might not be just about control or wounded pride. He might actually need my business's revenue. The thought was both disturbing and oddly empowering. That evening, my phone rang with an unexpected caller, my sister Hannah. "Can we meet?" she asked, sounding genuinely concerned. "Not at any of your shops, somewhere private." We agreed to meet at a neutral restaurant the following day. Hannah arrived looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen her. Hair pulled back, hastily, minimal makeup, and none of the carefully curated business casual attire she typically wore. "I owe you an apology," she said before even ordering. "At Christmas, I didn't stand up for you, and I should have." "You weren't laughing with the rest of them," I acknowledged. "No, but silence is complicity." She twisted her napkin nervously. "Look, things at home have gotten weird since your confrontation with Dad and Dylan. Dad's on edge, snapping at everyone. He called an emergency board meeting yesterday." As the conversation unfolded, Hannah revealed more about our father's business situation than I'd known. The Westlake development, his pride and joy, the project he'd boasted about at Christmas, was facing serious financing issues. 2 major investors had pulled out, citing concerns about market saturation. "He's leveraged a lot for this development," Hannah explained. "More than usual. I overheard him telling Mom that if Westlake falls through, it could impact everything." Suddenly, my father's interest in my coffee business made perfect if distasteful sense. He didn't want to help me grow. He needed a cash injection and saw my successful business as a convenient source. "I'm sorry I've been distant these past few years," Hannah continued. "I told myself I was focused on my career, but the truth is, I was afraid of losing my place in the family by supporting you too openly." Her candor was unexpected and appreciated. We spent the next 2 hours reconnecting with Hannah, asking genuine questions about my business journey and sharing her own frustrations with our family's dynamics. "Would you show me one of your shops?" sometime she asked as we finished. "I'd like to see what you've built." "I'd like that," I replied, feeling a tentative bridge being rebuilt. The next surprising visitor was my grandmother Eleanor, who showed up at my apartment that weekend with a container of homemade cookies and determined expression. "These vultures," she muttered as I let her in. "I've watched Walter do this for decades. Dismiss someone until they succeed, then swoop in to take credit or control." As we sat at my kitchen table, Eleanor shared stories I'd never heard, about how my father had pushed out his original business partner once the company began to thrive, about distant relatives whose ideas he had appropriated, about his pattern of undermining then absorbing competitors. "He did the same to your grandfather," she revealed, surprising me. "Your grandpa Jack started that real estate company. Walter was brought in as a junior partner, gradually pushed him out, and rewrote the company history." This revelation struck me deeply. The Thompson real estate empire that my father had always claimed to build from nothing had actually been started by my grandfather, the quiet gentleman I barely remembered who had passed away when I was 10. "Why are you telling me this now, Grandma?" I asked. "Because you need to know what you're dealing with," she said firmly. "And because I made a mistake staying quiet all these years, I won't make that mistake with you." Her support strengthened my resolve, but the family pressure continued to escalate. Uncle Raymond called, offering to mediate the situation, while subtly suggesting that my father's offer was more than generous. Aunt Patricia began telling extended family members that I was having mental health episodes and delusions of grandeur, positioning any future legal action as an unfortunate necessity for my own good. The most unexpected turn came when Hannah actually visited one of my coffee shops, bringing our mother Diane with her. They arrived mid-afternoon at our university location, clearly uncomfortable but making an effort. I showed them around, introduced them to staff, and watched their expressions shift from skepticism to surprise as customers greeted me by name and employees demonstrated obvious respect. "It's all real," my mother said quietly, as we sat with coffees afterward. "Everything you said at Christmas." "Did you think I was lying?" I asked, more hurt than I wanted to admit. "I didn't know what to think," she confessed. "Your father was so certain you were exaggerating." The conversation was strained but important. For perhaps the first time my mother was seeing me, and my father, clearly. Hannah, meanwhile, was full of insightful questions about business operations, genuinely engaged with understanding what I had built. As they were leaving, my mother hesitated, then said something that chilled me. "Be careful, Zion. Your father isn't taking this well. When he can't control something, he... What, Mom? He finds ways to break it." Instead, she finished quietly, before hurrying to the car. That evening, I received an alarming call from Amber. The health inspector had shown up at 2 of our locations simultaneously, an unusual coincidence. While we passed both inspections easily, the inspectors had admitted they were responding to anonymous complaints. The next day, I learned that my father had approached one of our bean suppliers, suggesting they might find more lucrative contracts with a new chain he was advising. The supplier, a family farm we had supported since our early days, immediately called to warn me. The escalation continued when Carter discovered a trademark application filed by a newly formed subsidiary of Thompson Enterprises for Thompson Coffee Works. An obvious attempt to create brand confusion with our Thompson Coffee collective. With each new development, it became increasingly clear that my father wasn't just making a business play, he was launching a systematic campaign to either force me to accept his terms or destroy what I had built. That night, I met with my core team, Carter, Amber, Natalie, and Marcus, to discuss our response. We sat around the conference table in our headquarters, reviewing the mounting evidence of my family's tactics. "They're coming at us from multiple angles," Marcus observed. "Pressure on leases, regulatory harassment supplier, intimidation, trademark infringement, classic corporate bullying tactics." "But why?" Carter asked, baffled. "Why not just start their own coffee chain, if they're so interested in the business?" "Because this isn't about coffee," Natalie said insightfully. "It's about power and control. Zion succeeded without their help outside their sphere of influence. That challenges the entire Thompson family narrative. And based on what Hannah shared, I added my father needs cash fast. Building a coffee business from scratch takes years. Taking over mine is the quickest path to revenue." "So what do we do?" Amber asked, concern evident in her voice. "We can't fight Thompson Enterprises' resources indefinitely." Marcus leaned forward. "Actually, we can. Zion has built something legitimate, documented, and legally sound. Your father is engaging in textbook tortious interference and potential fraud. We have options." As we discussed strategy late into the night, I wrestled with the emotional weight of the situation. These weren't just business adversaries. This was my family. Taking legal action would permanently alter our relationship, closing doors that might never reopen. "You need to decide what matters more," Natalie said gently, when I expressed this concern. "Maintaining the possibility of reconciliation with people who have repeatedly dismissed and are now actively trying to harm you, or protecting what you've built and the people who actually support you." When framed that way, the decision became clear. The next morning, I called Marcus and gave him the green light to prepare our response. It was time to establish boundaries, legally enforceable ones, with the Thompson family. Marcus Harrison didn't believe in half measures. When I gave him authorization to respond to my family's actions, he assembled what he called a comprehensive deterrence package, designed not just to stop the current interference, but to prevent future attempts. "We're sending a message," he explained as we reviewed the documents in his downtown office. "That message is Zion Thompson and Thompson Coffee Collective are not vulnerable targets." The centerpiece was a detailed cease and desist letter that Marcus had crafted with surgical precision. It documented every action my father and brother had taken: the visit to my flagship store, the contact with landlords, the health inspection complaints, the supplier interference, the trademark application. Each incident was presented with dates, names, and supporting evidence. "We've been thorough," Marcus assured me. "Your operations manager Amber has been exceptional at documenting everything, and we've collected statements from the landlords and suppliers your father approached." The letter explicitly warned against further interference with my business relationships, regulatory harassment, or trademark infringement. It outlined potential legal consequences, including tortious interference claims, unfair business practice complaints, and, if necessary, a public lawsuit. "A lawsuit is the nuclear option," Marcus said. "Your father won't want his tactics made public. His reputation with investors and partners is too important." To reinforce the seriousness of our position, Marcus included an independent business valuation conducted by a respected firm. The report detailed Thompson Coffee Collective's assets, revenue streams, growth trajectory, and current market value, $17.3 million. "This shows them exactly what they're messing with," Marcus explained. "Not some hobby business, but a substantial enterprise with significant legal resources at its disposal." He also included statements from our primary bank and investors, confirming the company's excellent financial health and backing. These third-party validations would be particularly effective in countering my family's narrative that my business success was exaggerated. The final component was perhaps the most impactful: a comprehensive dossier of Thompson Coffee Collective's public recognition, including articles from business publications, industry awards, community impact acknowledgments, and customer same-est testimonials. "People respect what other respected people value," Marcus noted. "These external validations will matter especially to someone like your father who's obsessed with status and recognition." As we finalized the package, I faced a difficult decision: who should receive copies. Marcus recommended, including all immediate family members who had been present at the Christmas dinner. "Transparency eliminates the opportunity for your father to control the narrative," he explained. "If everyone receives the same information simultaneously, he can't spin or minimize what's happening." I agreed, but requested time to prepare personal letters to accompany the legal documents for my mother, sister, and grandmother. These wouldn't soften the legal message, but would provide context and leave doors open for those relationships that might be salvageable. To my mother, I wrote, "Mom, I take no pleasure in sending these legal documents, but I need to protect what I've built. I understand your loyalty to Dad, but I hope you can understand that his actions have forced this response. I remain open to a relationship with you that exists independently from these business conflicts." To Hannah, whose recent efforts to reconnect had meant a great deal, "Hannah, thank you for reaching out and for your willingness to see my business firsthand. These legal steps are not directed at you, but I wanted you to have the complete information about what's happening. I value our rekindling relationship and hope we can continue building that connection, despite these difficulties with Dad and Dylan." And to my grandmother Eleanor, my most consistent supporter, "Grandma, you've believed in me when no one else in the family did, and I'll always be grateful for that. I'm sorry that this conflict might cause you distress, but please know that I'm only protecting what I've worked so hard to build, something I know you understand. Your cookies and wisdom are always welcome at my table, regardless of what happens with the rest of the family." 3 days later, the packages were delivered simultaneously to each recipient by courier, requiring signatures to confirm receipt. I spent that morning in my original coffee shop, the place where everything had started finding comfort in the familiar rhythms of the business I had built. The responses began within hours. My father's came first, a thunderous phone call that I let go to voicemail. His message was predictably indignant, veering between threats and attempts at manipulation. "This is absolutely outrageous." His voice boomed from my phone speaker. "To send lawyers after your own family, after everything we've done for you, this is not how Thompsons handle disagreements. Call me immediately so we can discuss ending this foolishness before you do permanent damage to this family." Dylan took to social media with a thinly veiled post about ungrateful children who forget where they came from and hide behind legal threats when offered help. Several family friends commented with supportive messages, having clearly heard only his version of events. The surprise came from Uncle Raymond, who called with an unexpectedly measured tone. "I received your legal communication," he began formally. "While I don't appreciate being included in what I consider a dispute between you and your father, I must acknowledge that the business you've built appears more substantial than I had understood. I've advised Walter to back off and focus on his current projects rather than creating new complications." Coming from my father's most reliable ally, this represented a significant shift in the family dynamic. Uncle Raymond was nothing if not pragmatic, and he had clearly reassessed the situation based on the concrete evidence presented. My mother's call was tearful and conflicted. Between sobs, she revealed more than perhaps she intended about my father's financial situation. "You don't understand the pressure your father is under right now," she pleaded. "The Westlake project is in trouble. 2 major tenants backed out last month, and the construction loans are becoming due. He needed a win, Zion. He thought your coffee business could help shore things up." This confirmed what Hannah had hinted at. My father's interest in my business wasn't about reconciliation or even control for its own sake. It was a desperate grab for cash to save his overextended real estate venture. Thompson Enterprises, the family legacy he had lorded over me for years, was in financial trouble. Hannah's response was a simple text. "Got the package. I support you doing what's necessary. Can we meet for coffee this weekend? Your shop, your choice." The most welcome reaction came from grandmother Eleanor, who arrived at my apartment that evening with a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. "I've never been more proud of you," she said as I let her in. "It's about time someone stood up to Walter and his tactics." As we sat together, she shared her unfiltered assessment. "Walter has been running on bluster and intimidation for years. This Westlake development was his attempt to secure his legacy, but he overreached. Your success threatens him not just because you did it without him, but because you're doing well while he's struggling." She raised her glass in a toast to boundaries and the courage to enforce them. Over the next few days, a clear divide emerged in the family. My father Dylan and Aunt Patricia maintained a united front of outrage and indignation. My mother remained torn between loyalty to my father and newfound respect for what I had built. Uncle Raymond and his wife had retreated to a position of studied neutrality, unwilling to oppose Walter directly, but clearly not interested in being collateral damage in a legal dispute. Hannah had firmly shifted to my side, even visiting another of my coffee shops and posting a supportive social media review. And grandmother Eleanor was my most vocal champion, reportedly telling off Aunt Patricia at their weekly bridge game for spreading falsehoods about my business. The most significant outcome was immediate. The interference stopped. The trademark application for Thompson Coffee Works was withdrawn. No more anonymous complaints were filed with health inspectors. Landlords reported no further contacts from Thompson Enterprises representatives. Marcus called with the assessment I had hoped for. "They've backed off. Your father's smart enough to recognize when the cost of pursuit exceeds the potential benefit." The documented evidence and the unified front we presented made this too risky for him to continue. While the immediate threat had subsided, I harbored no illusions that this represented reconciliation or acceptance. My father had simply determined that the current approach wasn't viable. The family fracture, however, was real and likely permanent. That reality hit home when I received a formal invitation to Dylan's engagement party with a handwritten note from my mother, "Please come. We need to start healing as a family." I declined with a polite note sending a gift, but making it clear that I wouldn't participate in false family harmony while fundamental issues remained unaddressed. It was a boundary I needed to maintain, not out of bitterness but self-protection. The hardest part of growing up, Natalie observed when I shared this with her over dinner, is accepting that some relationships can't be what we wish they were. You've offered authenticity. They've chosen control and appearances. That's their loss, not yours. As the dust settled on the legal confrontation, I realized that while the business battle had been won, the deeper conflict had simply revealed truths that had been there all along. My success hadn't created the family dysfunction. It had merely exposed it. 6 months after the legal showdown with my family, I stood beside my grandmother Eleanor on a sunny morning as she cut the ribbon at the grand opening of Thompson Coffee Collective's 22nd location. At 82, she wielded those oversized ceremonial scissors with surprising strength, beaming with pride as local media captured the moment. "I never doubted you for a minute," she whispered as we posed for photos. "Not from the day you came home at 16 excited about that first coffee shop job." The new shop, located in the revitalized downtown arts district, featured an attached community space where we would host events classes and showcase local artists. It represented everything I had built my business around: quality coffee, community connection, and creating spaces where people felt valued. My sister Hannah stood nearby, having taken the morning off from her pharmaceutical marketing job to attend. Over the past months, she had become a regular in my life again, not just as family, but as someone I genuinely enjoyed spending time with. She had even started dating one of our regular customers, a literature professor she'd met while visiting my university location. "Dad drove by here yesterday," she mentioned quietly as we toured the finished space. Just slowly passed by, staring at the signage. "Mom said he didn't say a word about it when he got home." I nodded, unsurprised. Walter Thompson wouldn't acknowledge my continuing success publicly, but he was aware of it. Through family channels, I had heard that the Westlake development had been significantly scaled back, with my father bringing in additional partners to shore up financing. Partners who had demanded greater control in exchange for their investment. Dylan had gone conspicuously quiet after his engagement party, which I'd heard had been noticeably less lavish than originally planned. His social media, once filled with displays of luxury and success, had become subdued. The Thompson family image was being carefully managed in the face of financial reality. My mother Diane had begun making tentative independent overtures. She had called on my birthday for the first time in years, sent a thoughtful Christmas gift, and occasionally texted to check in. Our conversations remained somewhat surface level, but there was an honesty to them that had never existed before. She never mentioned my father or asked me to reconcile with him, a boundary she seemed to finally understand. As for Thompson Coffee Collective, the business continued to thrive. Amber Davis, my operations manager who had been with me through the most difficult times, had officially become a partner with a 5% ownership stake that recognized her contributions to our success. "You know what's funny," she said during the opening celebration. "When your father and brother came to the shop that day, they never once asked about the coffee itself, the product that built this whole business. They only saw numbers and assets." Her observation struck me as profound. My family had never understood that the foundation of my business wasn't clever financial engineering or market exploitation. It was simply creating something of genuine quality and value. Samuel Wright, my original mentor, had traveled from his retirement home in Florida to attend the opening. Now, in his late 60s, he moved more slowly, but his mind remained sharp and his coffee palate impeccable. "I gave you a job when you were 16, he reminisced as we shared a quiet moment, "but you've built something beyond anything I imagined. My one shop became your 22. That's a legacy I never expected." Carter Wilson, my best friend and the creative force behind our brand identity, proudly pointed out the design elements he had incorporated into the new location. "Remember when we couldn't afford proper signage for the first shop?" he laughed. "We hand-painted that original sign on a piece of salvaged wood. That first hand-painted sign now hung framed in our headquarters, a reminder of how far we had come." Natalie Chen, who had started as my business consultant and became something more, stood by my side throughout the day. Our relationship had developed gradually from professional respect to friendship to romance, unrushed, and built on a foundation of mutual admiration. "You know what I love about this," she said, gesturing to the bustling new shop. "It's that you never compromised your vision to please others. Not your family, not investors, not trend chasers. This is authentically yours." Later that evening, after the crowds had dispersed, I sat with my inner circle in the closed shop. Grandmother Eleanor, Hannah Carter, Amber, Natalie, and Samuel. We shared stories over coffee and some celebratory champagne, looking through photos of the business journey from that first struggling location to today's expansion. "I've been thinking about success," I told them as the conversation turned reflective. "For years I thought success would mean finally getting my father's approval, him acknowledging that my path was valid. I kept waiting for that moment, that validation. And now," Eleanor prompted, Now I realize that true success was never about his approval. It was about building something authentic that reflects my values and serves others well. It was about finding people who believe in the same vision. I looked around at the faces of those who had supported me, not because of my last name or out of obligation, but because they genuinely believed in what we were creating together. The family you choose can be more powerful than the family you're born into, Samuel said, raising his glass. Some of us are lucky enough to find our tribe. As the evening wound down, Hannah shared something that brought our journey full circle. I overheard Dad on the phone with his business partner last week, she said. They were discussing new ventures to diversify beyond real estate. The partner suggested specialty food and beverage concepts, and Dad immediately shut it down. No coffee shops, he said. That market's too competitive now. We all laughed at the irony, my father inadvertently acknowledging the impact my business had made on the market. Looking back over the tumultuous years since that fateful Christmas dinner, I realized that my family's mockery had been a disguised gift. Their dismissal had freed me to build something truly mine, without their interference or demands for compromise. Their laughter had fueled my determination in ways their support might never have. Sometimes, being underestimated is the greatest advantage you can have. People don't try to control what they don't value, giving you the freedom to create something authentic and meaningful. As for the future, Thompson Coffee Collective continues its thoughtful expansion. We're focused not on growing for growth's sake, but on creating community spaces that happen to serve exceptional coffee. Each new location provides employment opportunities with living wages and promotes local artists, musicians, and food producers. I still occasionally receive family party invitations which I evaluate case by case. I attend the ones that feel genuine and skip those that seem performative. I've learned that boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about defining the terms on which people can be in your life. The greatest lesson in all of this has been about the nature of validation. For years, I sought it from people fundamentally incapable of providing it. Now I find it in the quality of our products, the loyalty of our customers, the culture we've built, and the community we've fostered. Success isn't measured by silencing those who doubted you. It's measured by creating something so undeniably valuable that their doubts become irrelevant. If you're watching this and struggling with family who don't believe in your dreams, remember that their limitations aren't yours. Their inability to see your potential doesn't diminish it. Build anyway. Create anyway. Succeed anyway. And sometimes when you least expect it, you'll find yourself sitting at a table surrounded by people who do believe in you, your chosen family, celebrating achievements that once seemed impossible. Have you ever had someone underestimate your dreams or mock your ambitions? How did you respond? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more real-life stories, and share this with someone who might need to hear that their path is valid, even if it's not understood by everyone around. Thank them. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the greatest success comes after the loudest laughter.